Okay, I'm going to call our Plan Commission meeting for August 9, 2021 to order. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Phil Willems.
Here.
Gary Hersberg.
Here.
Brian Malish.
Here.
Chris Thomas.
Here.
Brian Wallace. Kevin Phelps.
Here. All right, first item we have is minutes. Would anybody like to change anything or notice any problems or look for a motion?
Move approval of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Motion by Phil Willems,
I'll second.
second by Chris Thomas. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comment. Is there anyone here who'd like to make a public comment on any item that's on or off the agenda for this evening? Any forms turned in?
Nope.
No? All right, we'll move on then. No public comments. Next, we've got public hearings. Our first one is public hearing and discussion recommendation on an ordinance amendment to create an airport overlay district adjacent to the Wanakee Airport. Tim?
Chair Zellner, this will be a quick one. Staff is still working on a draft ordinance. We are meeting with the school district next week, so the final draft is not ready at this time. We will be placing that on a future agenda, so no action needed tonight.
So do we even open a public hearing for tonight or leave it for the next one? Brian?
As long as nobody's here that they want to talk. I mean, I guess.
So why don't I open a public hearing and see if anybody's here?
Well,
or
I guess you can ask for, I mean, because my guess is when we bring it back, are we going to have another public hearing?
yes?
Okay, so, I mean, if anybody's here to speak, I think we should let them speak, but if not, then, so I guess you can open it if you want to, if we're gonna make sure that we have another
All right, so I'm
one.
going to open the public hearing for anybody who would like to address us on item number 1 with the airport overlay. All right, I see no one that wants to speak, so I will close the public hearing, and then do we need to make a motion to table it till
No,
next meeting, or just move on?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, moving on. That might be the fastest public hearing in history.
It's a first for you.
So, all right. Next, we have public hearing and discussion recommendation on an amendment to the zoning code to change the minimum side of efficiencies for all multifamily developments in the village. Tim?
Chair Zellner, yes, so as directed by the Plan Commission at its meeting last month, staff is bringing forward an ordinance amendment to amend the minimum square footage size for efficiency units from 500 square feet, I'm sorry, from 600 square feet down to 500 square feet. And that ordinance is included in your packet. Staff is recommending approval, available for questions.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do then is open up the public hearing for anybody who would like to address the commission on this item. You guys can always come back. Everybody here. Kidding. I mean, all right, then I'm going to close the public hearing on this. Comments from plan commissioners. Gary, I'm going to have you go first.
No, I think when I made the recommendation motion at the last meeting, I tried to use some logic to say, you know, if you took a one-bedroom apartment that's 600 square feet, if you take the bedroom out, which is a 10 by 10 room, logically 500 feet, kind of made sense to me. So that's kind of my whole basis, which I thought would serve everybody well.
Phil?
No
Any
comment
comments?
at all.
Chris Thomas?
How did we arrive at 500 square feet instead of 600?
That's the direction we were given to by the body last time.
Was there, I think last time we talked about looking around at other communities potentially. Was there any more research done?
We did. There's a table in the packet that reports to that nature. It's on the screen right now. As shown on the screen, there are no other Dane County communities that have a minimum under their zoning code. Look of communities outside. Certainly we didn't look at all communities in the state, but a look at some of them revealed that there are, I think, La Crosse and Wausau, the only ones we could find that actually spoke to the minimum size in their zoning code, and they're shown reflectively 220 square feet minimum in La Crosse, 400 square feet minimum in Wausau. Otherwise, a lot of communities have occupancy regulations in building regulations and building standards, which speak 150 square feet for the first occupant and 100 square feet for each additional. But again, that's in the building regulation section, not the zoning code.
So we currently have zoning code that says 600 square feet. We're looking to change that to 500.
That's correct.
But other communities don't really have this
That's correct.
zoning code
That's correct.
language at all? Okay. And what's the main goal here? Is it just to have cheaper, potentially cheaper housing?
In part, it's also, so there's, under the current code, there is no differentiation in size between an efficiency unit and a one-bedroom. And so what this will do is create another unit type in terms of size, as well as an expected reduction in price point, as the market would dictate.
Okay. No further questions?
So I don't want to speak for you, Gary, but I think where that 500 came from, Chris, is the 600 being one bedroom and just taking the bedroom out, which is a 10 by 10 usually. So it's that puts it to 500 for the efficiency to have the other.
That just helps developers when they come in. They know coming in what they can develop based on our code. That's what it's there for.
Kevin?
Nope, I don't have much. I like it. I think it makes sense.
Brian?
Yep, kind of the same spot. I'm kind of good with it as recommended, so no questions for me.
Okay, sounds like we're ready for a motion. Gary, do you want to make it again?
Sure, I would, I should look at the recommended motion so I can.
There you go.
Teed up.
Okay.
A motion to approve the PCR 21-01 recommending approval of the amendment to the minimum size for efficiency to the village board.
Okay, motion made by Gary Hertzberg. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And I just covered up my agenda. There we go. All right, next under new business, discuss and take action on a request by High Hill LLC for approval of the specific implementation plan for 200 multifamily units in the Heritage Hills subdivision. Who's introducing? Tim? Go ahead, Tim.
Chair Zellner, yes, this is a SIP request for approval of a 200 multifamily unit in the Heritage Hills subdivision. This request is consistent with the GDP, the village's comprehensive plan, and staff is recommending approval subject to all outstanding concerns being addressed to the satisfaction of the village engineer and utilities manager, as noted in the staff materials. Staff would like to add one condition, though, and that relates to the action the commission just took related to the efficiency ordinance, and staff is recommending that this approval be subject to the village board approving the related change in efficiency ordinance.
Okay.
And I believe the applicant is here and may have some comment.
Closer. You can stay there, Keith, right? Or you can go up to the podium, either one, whichever one you'd like.
I'll take the podium. Of course I have, you know. Good evening, Brian Munson with Vanderwall and Associates here on behalf of High Hill LLC. Along with me, Dan Brinkman, and then Greg Held with Canothy Bruce Architects. Just take a real brief minute here to introduce the project. As Tim mentioned, this is the implementation of the adopted general development plan from last year. Tracy, if you could pull up the PDF quickly. I just grabbed a couple slides here. Again, just to start with how we got here. And that was the adopted neighborhood plan for the entire property, the multifamily there in the southwest corner. If you could go to the next slide. Sorry, I don't have a clicker to advance. This will work. So before you tonight is the SIP for 200 units, consistent with the adopted general development plan and the guidelines that were placed therein, and the overall neighborhood. So we're excited to be back to implement the multifamily piece within the neighborhood. Originally designed for 4 to 5 buildings. You can see here 4 to 5 buildings arranged with access off of the boulevard to the east, as well as Hillcrest to the north. And we've been working closely with city staff on working through all the various iterations of the technical review, and really appreciate their input and feedback on the packet. If you could go to the next slide, please. We worked really closely with them to develop architecture, and Canothy Bruce did a great job of developing nice varied architecture with durable materials, broken roof lines, setbacks, articulation, really to try to create a project that is worthy of being at the gateway, both to our project and to the end of the community. And so we're just excited to be back here tonight to take the next steps toward the implementation. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, let's see, I'll go in reverse order this time. Brian, any questions?
I did have a couple, not so much necessarily just about the buildings themselves. Went through all the comments. I thought they looked mostly technical in nature, so good of staff taking care of that. I'm curious maybe a little bit more about the work as it relates to 19113. You know, maybe the Breinig Road intersection, and then working backwards to Division. And specifically, I think there was a comment about, you know, eastbound left-hand turn that doesn't exist, and the timing of that work with the timing of this.
Yes, so we are working very closely with the DOT on the design of both the new entrance here just east of the site, which will continue to be right in, right out, consistent with the previous approvals, as well as the lane revisions for Division Street. And so the DOT has been working closely with Wanakee, as well as village staff on that, to come to resolution on those. And we're comfortable with the comments that were made in terms of timing and the need to get those in place to support the project.
Okay, all right, good. Then, no, I think that was
Is it?
the
Okay.
biggest one.
Kevin? Phelps?
None right now.
Chris, Thomas?
So it's 200 units. How are these divided up between single, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom?
It's up on the screen.
Yep, so 37 efficiencies, 88 one-bedrooms, and 75 two-bedrooms.
And then this meets the parking requirements?
Yes,
Modified.
modified, as discussed in the report.
Any questions right now?
Good. Phil?
I think it's gonna answer a need that has been expressed to us. There were some areas in here that are a little tight that the fire department wanted mountable curbs. Are those being installed?
Yes,
Thank you.
we will work with them to resolve that and any of the other technical issues.
Thank you. That's it.
Gary?
It sounds like mostly market rate.
Yes.
Any handicap accessible units, or have you thought? How much?
2%.
Okay.
So that'd be 4?
Well, all of the units have to be considered adaptable, which is a little higher level of accessibility than you find in a typical house. But then 2% of them will be considered type A accessible.
The parking. And is there a phased approach to this, or 4 buildings one time? What are your thoughts?
We anticipate most likely taking on the first 2 buildings to the east and the clubhouse and the pool and grilling area first, and get those in the first phase, and then the remaining 2 buildings would follow right after that. We'd like to phase the buildings in so that we can do some lease up before we're carrying another building and another building, the cost of it. So it's really driven by the pace of rental, but typically we just follow one building after another.
All right. Really, the housing study, and maybe this goes to staff a little bit, the housing study, Todd, the need for apartments in this range is still in pretty high demand, right?
I look to Jason and Tim too to help out with this. We talked about the balance of multifamily versus single family, and we've explained how we believe the pace of development in the Viridian's development itself is suggesting that this is a reasonable balance of multifamily to single family, particularly there. And we didn't really dwell on market rate products within the housing study specifically. We talked about the missing middle housing category, which frankly, the Viridian project better addresses within their twin home and some of the single family that they're proposing. The housing study did suggest mixed developments that assemble a variety of housing unit types within the general area. So I kind of spewed a number of things, all of which I think suggest that Viridian's approach here recognizes what the housing study suggested. To that, maybe Jason and Tim would have some other thoughts.
I would just reinforce that I agree with everything Todd just said, that this is compatible and consistent with what the housing study said, and to add to that, that we continue to see you know, in our housing studies and plans across the state, we continue to see sustained demand for all housing types at all price points, at the state level and at the local level, pretty much everywhere. And so this is consistent with that as well, that there is demand for more housing of all types.
Would it be safe to say that maybe phase one would be in 2022 and phase two in 2023? Is that a logical
That's a logical.
kind of phasing approach? That's all I have.
Okay, you mentioned the two to the east would be first?
Right.
Is there a reason those two are picked?
Well, the first one is the smallest building, the 35 unit up in the northeast. That one is first primarily because of its size. It's the smallest of all the buildings and its proximity to the clubhouse in the center area. It gives us a nice core to start with. You can see that that one faces that whole area where all the other buildings are set back a little bit. And then as far as which direction we go from there, we just thought logical to come down and get that corner, to hold that corner visually and functionally, and then work around to the back.
Okay, do we have a slide? Mine didn't print very well. What do on the Highway 19, 113 side, what do the backs of those buildings look like? If you can give me a color picture of that, what it's gonna.
Well, I don't know if we have them colored. Oh, we may. Or,
Southwest.
PDF had them
so we won't be looking at building two.
So when you say
building
back,
one.
Chris, which facade are you looking for?
The backside that'll face Highway 19.
South of
South,
two.
very the south side.
This
Yeah.
was
two and
the first
three,
building. We
probably.
want to continue to building two.
Oh,
Building
sorry.
one, yep, just go to the next.
There you go. The tops.
Oh, was that it?
Yep.
That one?
Right
Yep,
there.
south elevation along Main Street. So we have some grade we're dealing with on the site, and there's a little bit more of an exposure. We're using masonry on that lower part of the building that's exposed. And
Side
we brought
78.
grade up a little bit, it's fairly steep back there. We brought it up as high as we could.
477.
Keep a reasonable grade behind the building.
And the PDF has color rendering,
one of
I think,
those.
toward the back. Yeah, there we go.
That one? No?
Next one.
77 or 78.
78. There we go.
That'd be the west building then along Main Street.
So the backs of the two buildings would be very similar. Is that
Yeah,
fair to say?
different color palettes, but, similar materials throughout. There's not I would say a back of house to any of them. We really tried to design them, and they did a great job of making sure that there's good presence along all sides of this project, because it's visible from somewhere. So I want to make sure we're presenting a good elevation, good design.
Okay.
I-
I saw two fingers pop up right away here. And we're good with all of our comp plan, with our requirements, height restrictions, all the different things. We meet all of that, yes?
That's correct. Initially, there was a potential to exceed the height requirement. We worked with the applicant to bring them into conformance with the height requirement, which is 45 feet.
Okay, and then my last question, and I'll get to you guys then, is traffic. Did we have a traffic analysis done for the whole area? So not to include this, for what would be happening on Division as well as,
Yeah, as part of the original GDP, there was a traffic analysis done, and this is consistent with the adopted overall master plan, so it was anticipated.
okay, Brian?
Just so you guys are comfortable, so we have an annexation agreement with Viridian, we have a phase one agreement, we have a phase two agreement that we've already approved. Those do have a lot of terms and conditions related to when the traffic improvements need to be made, taking into consideration the percentage development of not just the multifamily units, but also the entire development as a whole. And I think, to kind of piggyback off of what Tim said, and also what's in Kent's comments for Strand, there is language in there talking about certain public improvements that are gonna need to go in, either associated with this multifamily or potentially depending on the pace of the other single-family residential. And so in all likelihood, before occupancy permits are issued for the multifamily units, we will likely have another public improvements agreement that will deal in more specificity with certain traffic improvements that would be required.
Okay, so you just brought 2 more questions to me, but I'm gonna wait and let you go first, Brian, because maybe I have one of yours.
Okay, no, mine's quick and easy. One that I didn't see, and maybe connects a couple, Wanakee Utilities made a comment about the overhead power lines along 19, and I wasn't sure whether or not that was, or wasn't part of this.
Fortunately, I don't have an answer on that one. That was part
Okay.
of the conversation. It's something we'll follow up with staff on.
Okay, all right. I'm good.
That was, one of my comments was, you know, a couple of comments by the utility. We want to make sure we have those worked out before we have, I would think, final approval on this. Underground parking,
Yes.
Yes.
that's it.
Any blasting that's gonna be needed for this particular site?
We are not anticipating the need to, no. I believe we're far enough down the hill that we're clear of that.
We don't know. I mean, we don't know.
I said something about blasting under my breath when, right before you, so Tracy left.
Okay,
We
and
really
then,
don't know. I mean, it won't be super extensive if we need it.
okay, is the Division Street extension that's going past the Sled Hill is part of the division, is that step 2 or 3, or
I don't think that's been determined which
which phase that
phase
was in?
that's gonna happen in. But I know that is part of the overall discussion of the balance of the neighborhood, yes.
And which is where my question was coming from about the blasting, because I'm pretty
Oh, yeah.
sure we're gonna have to with that
There
one for
that one
matching.
probably will, my guess, but we'll have to determine that when we get there, yeah.
Okay, Brian, do you know that answer?
I'm sorry, what we were talking about over here was, and maybe this answers your question, since we don't know if there is blasting that's gonna be associated with, one of the conditions of approval that we might wanna add to this is, to the extent that blasting is required, we do have some blasting operations language in the Phase 2 agreement that the village board approved previously. We probably want to utilize that language for this multifamily development too, to the extent that blasting is required. Does that answer the question?
Kind of, I just was wondering when we had the Division Street planned for, if that was the extension over the hill where the Sled Hill? If that was in phase 2 or 3?
That is in the development agreement, or possibly the annexation agreement. I know that there is some timing. I'm just trying to find the specific.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how we can condense our blasting versus having it last over multiple different times if we can get it all done.
So there is language, so the timing of the Divergent Street extension improvements, it has to be completed on or before 50% of the dwelling units within the property are constructed.
Okay, will that be with this, with
I'm
200 units?
not sure, I mean, I guess they're shaking, I don't know to what, at what point we've hit that 50%, I don't know if this does it. But if it does, it needs to be, I mean, that's in the annexation agreement, so we can look into it further. I know that Brian's saying that it wouldn't, I mean, how many units total?
This is 25% of the overall.
Okay,
So there's a lot of other single-family home phases that are gonna be coming along before we get to the 50% threshold.
Okay,
The other thing I would add, in the event of blasting, in this case, this would be just for underground parking and for the building slab itself. It wouldn't be a situation similar to up the hill where there was more excavation components to it on a larger scale. So if there was blasting, it'd be much smaller amount needed just to get that underground parking in.
okay.
There's one other thing, and we've seen this in some other developments where you mentioned retention ponds there. It sounds like you're gonna have to add one retention pond. You know, we have some neighbors that, you know, they don't want water in the retention pond. Other neighbors that think it's their lake and we need to maintain it and put chemicals in it and, you know, so I just think as a staff and maybe as a group, we need to really clarify what that means and what the expectations the village has of a retention pond, so the residents that move in there, you know, have it pretty defined, because otherwise we kind of get, our public works guys get caught in the middle, and they have residents telling them one thing, and, so, I think something we ought to just do as a group, I think would help. And maybe it's fairly clarified in But
Well, I think I would need to talk to Kent. I mean, we can certainly do that, though, and to have a little bit more clarity for residents as to if we are required, if it's gonna become public and we're gonna required to maintain it and operate, what exactly we plan on doing with it.
because we have areas now that, you know, people have moved into the retention pond area, crossed their line and putting gardens in and putting trampolines in and doing all kinds of things because they say, well, you guys can't use it, so, you know, it's kind of like ours. And we need to clarify that because it puts everybody in a bad spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I hear you saying two things, Gary. One is, we just, you know, obviously, we have the discretion to handle the stormwater plans in the way that the village believes is appropriate. So one is just a communication, this is what we're gonna do. The second thing is, I mean, the fact of the matter is, those people are encroaching upon our property and they don't have a right to be there, and that's obviously an enforcement issue for the village as to how it's gonna pursue that.
Okay.
And in this case, most of the water will be going to the west, the existing ponds that are already been improved. The new ponds to the east are part of the new intersection and the discussion of some of those lands to the east, so. But in terms of clarity, we agree. You wanna make sure people just know what they're moving next to and what the expectations are.
Okay.
Okay, and complies with our numbers of units within the comp plan
Yes.
for other developments as well that are going on? Yes? Okay. All right, that's all mine. Anybody else have any other comments? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion.
Well, I guess before you guys make them, or do you wanna keep going?
Yeah, I was gonna say, to clarify, would you like a condition added related to the blasting language? You want that added? Okay.
Okay,
I can give it a try. Motion to recommend approval of the Heritage Hills High Hill LLC SIP to the village board that would allow construction of 200 multifamily units in the Heritage Hills subdivision, subject to all outstanding staff concerns being addressed to the satisfaction of the village engineer and utilities manager. And that would include blasting per our previous agreement. Further, that said approval is conditioned upon a final site plan being submitted to the village that addresses outstanding staff concerns prior to the issuance of a building permit for the project.
and then also to add for what you had a,
Right,
Efficiency
subject to board approval of the related change to efficiency size.
Yes, and subject to board approval to the change of efficiency size.
okay, so motion by Phil Willems. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Kevin Phelps.
Chris? Just to be clear, that, and maybe a friendly amendment, you are the final acting authority on the SIP, so this would not go to the village board, so the phrase "to the village board" would be removed from the motion.
Okay,
All the other conditions would still apply, though.
Phil is good.
that's good.
Second by Kevin. Is
Yep.
that good? Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have discussion recommendation on request for annexation of 27 acres of land owned by Stotz Family Partnership LLP, 6101 Hogan Road, from the town of Westport into the village of Wanakee. Tim?
Thank you, Chair Zellner. Yes, this is a request coming from the Stotz Family Partnership LLP to annex land near Hogan and State Highway 19 and 113. You may recall, these lands were recently included in the village's urban service area. That was approved by the Capital Area Regional Plan Commission and DNR, so this request is consistent with that, consistent with policies in the village's comprehensive plan. Staff is recommending approval and notes that there will be an annexation agreement to address statutory payments and future construction of public improvements when it's developed. That'll be going to the village board along with this annexation request.
Okay,
Staff is recommending approval.
commission members, any questions, comments, or a motion? I don't see any comments. Chris? Okay, okay, then we'd look for a motion.
I'll make the motion to recommend approval of the Stotz Family Partnership LLP annexation request at 6101 Hogan Road from the town of Westport to the village of Wanakee, with the land being placed in the A1 Agricultural Holding District for zoning.
Okay, motion by Chris Thomas,
Second?
second by Brian Malich. One question for me, with annexation from Westport to Wanakee, does the 5 years still remain in effect for taxation?
Yes.
And during that time, when we're paying for these improvements, does Westport participate in that, or is that only us?
So what, as part of our standard annexation agreement, you know, by the statutes, the village has to make payments to the town, in this case Westport. The developer will agree as part of that agreement that they will reimburse us, the village, for any costs paid to the town.
Okay, okay. Any other comments? Okay, call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And then last, there's no joint plan tomorrow night,
That is correct.
so no other things with that? So one last motion.
Motion to adjourn?
I think Phil started first, so I'm gonna give Phil that motion.
Take a second.
Brian's gonna get the second on that one. Motion to adjourn, first and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
It's amazing how
Thanks,
long
everyone.
you went through all those.